Let me create a detailed outline and then write the story for you based on the title and thumbnail text. Nathan describes the perfect wedding day turning into a nightmare, brief introduction to his bride Julia and their relationship, quick setup of the reception seating incident with Julia's mother, the public slap that shocked everyone, Julia's ultimatum to apologize or leave, Nathan's decision to walk out of his own wedding, call to action, asking viewers to subscribe and share if they've ever had to make a difficult choice to maintain their dignity. Meeting Julia at a mutual friend's party, Nathan's initial attraction to her confidence and beauty, their first conversation and chemistry, contrasting backgrounds, his middle-class upbringing versus her wealthy family too. Early relationship development, whirlwind romance over 6 months. First signs of Julia's controlling tendencies, meeting her domineering mother Barbara for the first time. The tense dynamic between Julia and Barbara Tres. First encounters with Julia's family, dinner at her parents' mansion, Barbara's subtle criticisms of Nathan's background, Julia's father William seeming kind but passive, Nathan's attempts to win over Barbara failing consistently. 4. The proposal and engagement. Nathan's thoughtful proposal at their favorite restaurant, Julia's immediate acceptance and joy, initial wedding planning going smoothly, Barbara gradually taking over all wedding decisions, Julia allowing her mother's interference despite Nathan's concerns. 5. Pre-wedding tensions. Barbara's increasing demands about the wedding, Julia's reluctance to stand up to her mother, Nathan trying to compromise while maintaining some control, the growing strain on their relationship, Nathan's friends expressing concerns about Julia's family. 1. Morning of the wedding, Nathan's excitement and nervousness. 2. Final preparations with his groomsmen, last-minute changes made by Barbara without consulting him, Nathan choosing to stay positive for Julia's sake. 2. The ceremony, beautiful church wedding going as planned, exchange of vows and rings without incident, Nathan's genuine happiness believing they overcame the challenges, brief moment of tension when Barbara objects to a reading. 3. Start of the reception, grand entrance as husband and wife, first dance going perfectly, initial seating arrangements at head table, Barbara unexpectedly approaching the head table. 4. The seating confrontation, Barbara demanding Nathan's seat next to Julia. Traditional seating plan already in place with parents at their own table. Nathan politely declining to move. Barbara's increasing agitation and scene causing. Julia siding with her mother instead of supporting Nathan. 5. The shocking slap, Julia's escalating anger as Nathan stands his ground, her sudden slap across his face in front of all guests, complete silence falling over the reception, Julia's ultimatum, apologize to my mother or leave. Nathan's moment of clarity about the relationship. 1. The immediate reaction, guests' shocked expressions, Nathan's groomsmen stepping forward to support him, Barbara's smug satisfaction, Nathan's decision process in that crucial moment, choice to walk away with dignity rather than submit. 2. Leaving the reception, Nathan calmly removing his wedding ring, final words to Julia about respect, walking out despite Julia's family's protests, support from his family and friends who follow him out, drive to hotel alone to process what happened. 3. The first 48 hours, flood of messages and calls from Julia, alternating between angry demands and tearful pleas, Nathan maintaining silence to process his feelings, support from friends who witnessed the cops and Ploskins, Nathan maintaining silence to process his feelings. Incident. Julia's family attempting to control the narrative. 4. The attempted reconciliation, Julia showing up at Nathan's apartment uninvited, her initial lack of genuine remorse, conversation revealing deeper issues in their relationship, Nathan standing firm on needing respect not control, Julia's realization that she can't manipulate him anymore. 5. The decision to end it, Nathan's clarity about not wanting a marriage controlled by Barbara, meeting with Julia to return wedding gifts, her last attempt to win him back without acknowledging the real issues, Nathan's firm but compassionate goodbye, beginning of divorce proceedings despite being married less than a week. 1. Immediate aftermath and recovery, moving to a new apartment to start fresh, therapy to process the relationship and wedding disaster, support system of family and friends, dealing with gossip and questions from acquaintances. 2. 6 months later, personal growth, rediscovering hobbies and interests suppressed during relationship, peace in. Career advancement from focusing on work. New perspective on healthy relationships. Chance encounter with Julia looking unhappy with her mother 3. 1 year later, moving forward, dating again more carefully and with clearer boundaries, meeting Sarah who respects his opinions and stands by him. Contrast between healthy relationship and previous control. Sarah's family welcoming him without judgment 4. The unexpected closure, letter from Julia acknowledging her mistakes, her sharing that she's in therapy and creating boundaries with Barbara, Nathan's polite but firm response wishing her well, final, closure and freedom from the past 5. Final reflections and wisdom gained, value of self-respect over pleasing others, importance of establishing healthy boundaries, recognition of red flags in controlling relationships, how losing something that wasn't right led to finding what is. Final message about standing up for yourself, even in difficult moments. Question for viewers about when they've had to choose self-respect over approval. Now I'll write the full story according to this outline. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Julia and I had spent a year planning our perfect wedding, and everything had been going according to plan. The ceremony was beautiful, our vows heartfelt, and I truly believed we were starting our forever. Then came the reception. As we sat at the head table, my new mother-in-law Barbara approached, demanding I give up my seat next to Julia. I politely declined, explaining the seating arrangement was traditional. What happened next still haunts me. Julia turned to me, eyes flashing with anger, and slapped me hard across the face. The room went silent. Then came her ultimatum: apologize to my mother or leave. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. If you have ever had to make a difficult choice to preserve your dignity, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments if you think I made the right decision. I first met Julia at my college friend Mark's 30th birthday party. She walked in wearing a simple blue dress that somehow looked more expensive than anything I had ever owned. Her confident smile and the way she commanded attention without trying caught my eye immediately. I waited for the right moment to introduce myself, and when I finally worked up the courage, she surprised me by knowing who I was. You must be Nathan, she said, extending her hand. Mark has mentioned you. The architect with the laugh that fills the room, right? I nodded, surprised Mark had talked about me. And you are Julia Harrington. I work with Mark's wife at the foundation. We spent the entire night talking. Julia was smart, ambitious, and passionate about her work in nonprofit fundraising. By the end of the party, I had her number and plans for dinner that weekend. Our relationship developed quickly. Within 6 months, we were practically living together, splitting time between my modest apartment and her much nicer condo in the upscale part of town. Everything seemed perfect, though there were occasional moments that should have given me pause. Julia had definite ideas about how things should be done, from which restaurants were acceptable to what I should wear to her work functions. I usually went along with her preferences, thinking it was just part of her organized personality. When she suggested I upgrade my wardrobe before meeting her parents, I took it as her wanting them to be impressed rather than as a sign she was somewhat embarrassed by my middle-class background. Meeting her mother Barbara for the first time was an experience I should have paid more attention to. Julia became a different person around her, less confident, more acquiescent. We had dinner at their sprawling mansion in Westlake Hills, complete with live-in staff and art that probably cost more than my annual salary. Barbara Harrington was tall, immaculately dressed, and had the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. From the moment we were introduced, I could feel her assessing me and finding me wanting. "So, Nathan," she said during the appetizer course, "Julia tells me you work for Davidson and Associates. Small firm is not it. Do they handle any significant projects? We specialize in sustainable commercial design," I explained. "We just won a bid for the new community center downtown." "How quaint," she replied with a thin smile. "William used to serve on the board of Henderson Global. They design skyscrapers all over the world. Perhaps he could put in a word, help you move up to something more substantial." Julia's father, William, seemed kind but passive, allowing Barbara to dominate the conversation. Throughout dinner, she made similar comments about my career, my education at a state university rather than an Ivy League school like Julia's, and even the watch I wore. "Mother, please," Julia would occasionally say, but without any real conviction. After dinner, she assured me her mother was just protective and would warm up to me eventually. She never did. Over the following months, I made countless efforts to win Barbara's approval. I brought thoughtful gifts, asked about her charity work, even read books she mentioned so we could discuss them. Nothing worked. In her eyes, I would never be good enough for her daughter. Despite this, my relationship with Julia deepened. We talked about the future, our shared dreams of travel, and eventually children. 1 year after we met, I proposed at the restaurant where we had our first date. I had saved for months for the ring, which was beautiful but not as large as I suspected her mother would expect. "Yes, absolutely, yes," Julia cried, tears streaming down her face as the restaurant applauded. That night was perfect. The problems began the next day when Julia called her mother. Initially, wedding planning was enjoyable. We agreed on a spring ceremony, a guest list of about 150 people, and a reception that would be elegant but not extravagant. I was involved in every decision, and Julia seemed to value my input. Then Barbara stepped in. What started as suggestions quickly became mandates. The guest list doubled. The venue we had chosen was suddenly too common, replaced by an exclusive country club where the Harringtons were members. The simple, elegant cake we wanted became a 7-tier monstrosity. My suggestions were dismissed sometimes, with Julia backing her mother instead of me. "Honey, my parents are paying for most of it," Julia would say when I expressed frustration. "They deserve to have some input." "Some input is fine, but it feels like we are not making any decisions anymore," I replied during one particularly heated discussion. "You are overreacting. Mother just wants the best for us." As the wedding approached, Barbara's control extended beyond the ceremony itself. She had opinions about where we should live closer to them, when we should start a family immediately, and even where I should apply for new jobs firms with the right connections. My friends noticed the change in our relationship. My best friend and best man Ryan pulled me aside at my bachelor party. "Are you sure about this, Nate?" he asked quietly, while the others were engrossed in a pool game. "Julia seems great when it is just the two of you, but around her family. I do not know, man. You seem to disappear." "It is just wedding stress," I assured him, "and maybe myself too. Things will settle down after we are married." I truly believed that. I loved Julia and thought that once we were husband and wife, we would establish our own boundaries with her family. I was wrong. The morning of our wedding dawned clear and perfect. I woke up in a hotel suite with Ryan and my other groomsmen, excited despite the nerves. This was it, the day I would marry the woman I loved. "Today's the big day, brother," Ryan said, handing me a cup of coffee. "Last chance to run for the border." I laughed. Not a chance. I cannot wait to see her walking down the aisle. The morning passed in a blur of preparations. Showers, shaves, struggling with cufflinks, and pep talks. My phone buzzed several times with messages from Julia, mostly relaying last-minute changes her mother had made to the reception, seating the photography schedule, and even which groomsmen would escort which bridesmaids. "Just go with it," I texted back. "Nothing matters except that we will be married by tonight." The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock at St. Mark's Episcopal Church, a beautiful old stone building with stained glass windows that Julia's family had attended for generations. My family, more modest in means but rich in warmth, filled several rows on the groom's side. The Harringtons and their social circle dominated the bride's side, everyone dressed impeccably. The ceremony itself was beautiful. When the doors opened and Julia appeared on her father's arm, my breath caught. Her dress was stunning, her smile radiant. As she made her way toward me, I felt like the luckiest man alive. We exchanged traditional vows, our voices steady and sure. When the minister pronounced us husband and wife, I kissed her with all the love in my heart, truly believing we had overcome the challenges of her family's interference. There was one small moment of tension, when Barbara objected to the scripture reading my sister had chosen, loudly whispering that it was too common, but it passed quickly, and soon we were being introduced as Mr. and Mrs. Nathan Parker, to thunderous applause. The reception was held at the Lakeside Country Club, its ballroom transformed with thousands of white roses and crystal decorations that Barbara had insisted upon. Julia and I made our entrance, had our first dance to our special song, and everything seemed perfect as we took our seats at the head table. The traditional head table arrangement placed Julia and me in the center, with our best man and maid of honor beside us, followed by the rest of the wedding party. Our parents were seated at tables directly in front of us, but separate as is customary. Barbara had approved this arrangement during planning, though she had insisted on selecting which guests sat at which tables throughout the rest of the room. We had just been served the first course. When I noticed Barbara approaching our table, her expression determined. She stopped directly behind Julia and tapped her shoulder. "Darling, this arrangement will not work," she said loudly. "I need to be sitting next to you. There are several people I need to introduce you to during dinner." Julia looked surprised. "But Mom, we planned the seating this way. You and Dad have your own table with the Petersons and the Grants." Barbara's smile tightened. "Plans change. Nathan can move down and sit with his friends. A mother should be next to her daughter on her wedding day." All conversation at our table stopped. I felt everyone's eyes on me as Barbara stared expectantly. "Mrs. Harrington," I said as politely as possible, "Julia and I are supposed to sit together as bride and groom. That is the traditional arrangement. But we would be happy to come to your table after dinner to meet anyone you would like to introduce us to." Her eyes narrowed. "I am not asking, young man. I am telling you to move." Julia shifted uncomfortably beside me. "Maybe you could move down just for a little while, Nathan." To keep the peace, I was stunned. This was our wedding day, our head table, and my place was beside my new wife. I turned to Julia, speaking quietly. "This is our special day. We planned everything carefully, including where everyone would sit. I do not think it is too much to ask to sit next to my bride at our wedding reception." Barbara's face flushed with anger. "This is exactly what I warned you about, Julia. He is disrespectful and stubborn, no consideration for family at all." "I have great respect for family," I replied, trying to keep my voice level. "But today, Julia and I are starting our own family, and I believe we deserve this moment together." Julia's expression changed, her features hardening, in a way I had seen before, when she sided with her mother against me. But I never expected what came next. She turned to face me fully, her eyes flashing. "Why do you have to make everything so difficult? Why can you not just do this one thing for my mother, Julia? This is not just one thing. This is our wedding day, our only wedding day." The slap came out of nowhere. Her hand connected with my cheek with such force that my head snapped to the side. The sound echoed through the suddenly silent ballroom. 280 guests froze, forks, mid-air, conversations halted. I raised my hand to my stinging cheek, more shocked than hurt. Julia stood over me, breathing hard, her wedding gown rustling with each angry breath. "Apologize to my mother," she demanded. "Apologize right now, or leave." In that frozen moment, with hundreds of eyes on us, I saw our future with perfect clarity. This would be our marriage. Julia and Barbara allied against me, my feelings and boundaries always secondary, expected to apologize for standing up for myself. Every holiday, every decision about our home, our future children would play out just like this moment. I stood slowly, straightened my tuxedo jacket, and looked directly into Julia's eyes. "No," I said quietly. "I will not apologize for wanting to sit next to my wife at our wedding. And I will not spend my life being slapped literally or figuratively for having self-respect." The silence in the ballroom was absolute as I removed my wedding ring and placed it gently on the table. Barbara looked triumphant, clearly believing I would back down. Julia's expression shifted from anger to disbelief. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "I am choosing to respect myself," I replied loud enough for those nearby to hear. "I would have given you everything, Julia. My love, my support, my future. But I will not give up my dignity, not even for you." I turned and walked away from the head table, past the stunned guests, toward the exit. My best man, Ryan, immediately stood and followed me. Then my parents, my siblings, and most of my friends rose from their tables and walked out with me. Some of Julia's friends looked conflicted, but none left their seats. "Nathan, wait," Julia called as I reached the door. "You are embarrassing me." I paused and turned. "No, Julia. You embarrassed yourself when you chose your mother's control over your husband's respect." The drive back to my hotel was surreal. Ryan insisted on coming with me, concerned about my state of mind. We rode in silence for several minutes before he spoke. "That took guts, man. Are you okay?" I stared out the window at the passing city lights. "No, but I will be." The next 48 hours were a blur of emotions and notifications. My phone exploded with messages. First angry texts from Julia demanding I return to the reception, then tearful voicemails asking where I was staying, followed by increasingly desperate pleas to talk. Her parents' messages were less varied. Threats of lawsuits for wedding costs, accusations of abandonment and character assassination. I responded to none of them, needing time to process what had happened and what it meant. My friends who had witnessed the incident rallied around me. Several sent videos they had taken, concerned that the Harringtons might try to spin a different narrative. The footage was worse than I remembered. The entitled demand from Barbara Julia's sudden violence, the shocked faces of our guests. You know they are telling everyone you had a mental breakdown or something, Ryan told me on the second day. Barbara is saying you had been drinking too much and became irrational. Let them say what they want, I replied. The people who matter know the truth. On the third day I returned to the apartment Julia and I had shared. She had been staying with her parents, but I knew a confrontation was inevitable. Sure enough, she arrived less than an hour after I got home. She looked different. Smaller somehow, without her mother's presence bolstering her. When I opened the door, she immediately tried to embrace me. I stepped back. "We need to talk," she said, her voice shaking. "You need to come home." "People are talking." "I am home," I replied, "and I do not care what people are saying." "How could you walk out on our wedding? Do you have any idea how humiliated I was?" I stared at her in disbelief. "You slapped me in front of everyone we know, because I would not give up my seat to your mother. And you are worried about your humiliation. You were being difficult. If you had just moved, none of this would have happened." This reaction confirmed everything I had realized at the reception. There was no acknowledgement of her actions, no genuine remorse, just concern for appearances and blame for me not submitting. "Julia, do you honestly not see the problem? This is not about a chair. This is about respect. You physically struck me for not obeying your mother. What kind of marriage would that be?" For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. "I should not have slapped you. That was wrong. But you pushed me to it by being so stubborn. No one pushes anyone to violence," I said firmly. "That was your choice. Just like it is my choice now to end this relationship." Her expression changed to panic. "You cannot be serious. We just got married. What about all our plans? What about the honeymoon? What will everyone say?" "I am completely serious. I would rather face the embarrassment of a failed marriage than the lifetime of unhappiness that would come from staying in one where I am not respected." Our conversation continued for hours, cycling through her anger, bargaining tears, and occasional moments of almost understanding. But she never truly acknowledged the fundamental problem, that she had consistently chosen her mother's control over our relationship, culminating in that public humiliation. The next day, I consulted a lawyer about annulment proceedings. Since the marriage had not been consummated and was less than a week old, the process would be relatively straightforward. When Julia realized I was serious, she made one last attempt at reconciliation, showing up at my office with tears and promises to change. "I will talk to Mother," she insisted. "Things will be different. The problem is not just your mother," I explained as gently as possible. "It is that you do not see us as a team. A marriage cannot work that way." As I returned her house key, I felt a strange combination of sadness and relief. The life I had imagined with Julia was gone, but so was the anxiety of trying to please someone who would always put her mother's wishes above our relationship. The months following what my friends called the wedding that was not were challenging but clarifying. I found a new apartment, throwing myself into furnishing it exactly as I wanted, with no one to criticize my choices or insist on more expensive alternatives. I started therapy, trying to understand why I had ignored so many warning signs and how I could establish healthier boundaries in future relationships. My family was incredibly supportive, never once suggesting I should have handled things differently. My mother, who had always been polite but reserved around Julia, finally admitted her concerns. She reminded me of my sister's ex-husband, she told me over Sunday dinner. "Always needing to be in control, always having the final say. You deserve someone who sees you as an equal, not as an accessory to their life." Professionally, I channeled my energy into work, securing several new clients and earning a promotion 6 months after the wedding. The firm was sympathetic about my situation, especially when rumors began circulating about what had happened. "Just focus on the Riverside project," my boss advised. "Success is the best answer to gossip." I avoided social media and declined invitations to events where I might encounter Julia or her family. Friends would occasionally report sightings. Julia looking thin and unhappy at charity events, Barbara pushing her toward eligible bachelors, the forced smiles in society page photos. Exactly 6 months after our wedding day, I ran into Julia's maid of honor, Taylor, at a coffee shop. She hesitated before approaching my table. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I should have left with you that day. What happened was not right, and I knew it." "You were her friend," I replied. "It was a difficult situation. She is miserable, you know," Taylor continued. "Barbara has her signed up on some exclusive dating service, already parading her around to suitable men. But Julia talks about you all the time. I nodded but offered no response that might encourage reconciliation. As Taylor left, she hesitated again. "For what it is worth, I think you did the right thing." It took courage. Gradually, I started dating again, approaching relationships with new awareness and better boundaries. I was clear about my expectations and values, walking away from connections that showed signs of control or manipulation. 9 months after the wedding incident, I met Sarah at a professional networking event. Sarah was different from Julia in countless ways. An elementary school teacher with a quick laugh and strong opinions, she was confident without being controlling. On our third date, she asked about my previous relationships and I told her the full wedding story, expecting shock or disbelief. "Good for you," she said instead. My last boyfriend expected me to prioritize his family events over everything else in my life, including my sister's college graduation. I wish I had been strong enough to walk away sooner. When I eventually met Sarah's family, the contrast with the Harringtons could not have been more striking. Her parents welcomed me warmly, interested in my work and my thoughts, rather than my pedigree or connections. Her father asked about my projects with genuine curiosity, and her mother insisted I call her by her first name immediately. "We are just happy Sarah found someone who respects her," her father told me during a backyard barbecue. "That is all that matters to us." As my relationship with Sarah deepened, the last remnants of my connection to Julia faded. The annulment had been finalized long ago, the joint accounts closed, mutual friends had chosen sides. The only remaining tie was a letter that arrived exactly 1 year after our wedding day. "Dear Nathan," Julia wrote, "it has taken me a year to understand what happened and why. I have been in therapy working to establish boundaries with my mother that should have existed long ago. I realize now how wrong I was. Not just at the reception, but throughout our relationship. I allowed my mother's need for control to overshadow what should have been most important, us. I do not expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that your decision that day forced me to confront truths I had been avoiding my entire life. I am learning to be my own person. Thank you for having the courage I lacked." I responded with a brief note, wishing her well in her journey of self-discovery, but making it clear that our paths would not cross again. Her letter provided unexpected closure, confirming that I had made the right choice on what should have been the happiest day of my life. Looking back now, I can see that moment of crisis as the beginning of a better journey. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from those who cannot respect your boundaries, even when it means leaving behind a dream you cherished. Real love does not demand that you diminish yourself. It does not slap you for standing your ground. It does not make ultimatums or prioritize control over compassion. When someone shows you who they are and what they value, believe them the first time. I am grateful that I found the strength to believe what I saw that day, rather than what I had hoped to see. Have you ever had to walk away from someone or something important to preserve your self-respect? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. And if you know someone who might be struggling with setting boundaries in their relationships, share this video with them. Sometimes, knowing you are not alone in these difficult choices makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that choosing yourself is not selfish. It is essential for building a life of authentic happiness.